Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Licensing and Public Protection Committee being held today, the 2nd of November 2021 at 7 p.m, which it is now. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and recorded for publication at a later date. May I also ask members, in order to avoid any confusion, that if they wish to vote to be held on any item, that they make me aware of this at the appropriate time. Thank you. May I also start by asking if there are any apologies or absences, as there are members or any substitutions taking place this evening. I think we've already received one, Councillor John Tagg, you're actually replacing Councillor Sweeney. That's correct, thank you. Right, let's go into licensing part one. Do any members wish to declare an interest in relation to licensing matters on the agenda? Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting can be found on pages 5 to pages 8 of your pack. Are members content that these can be taken as read? Thank you. That is approved, thank you. Moving to item 4, which can be found on pages 7 to 40 of your pack. This is in relation to the review of statement of licensing's principle. Mr. Burton, would you please take us through the item, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Members, you'll remember the last committee. We brought before you a proposed draft Gambling Act policy, statement of licensing principles. Every 3 years, the council are obliged to renew the policy, and it had just come to that time of year where we were due to do that. So we brought that before you on the 27th of July with a draft document and then a request to allow a consultation period of 6 weeks to be sent out to all the relevant parties that we would normally send it to, that we are obliged to by law, but also some additional ones in terms of local decision making. We sent out the consultation in July. The consultation period closed on the 17th of September, and we received just one response. That response is attached at Appendix A of your report, and it's from the company secretary of a charity called Gamble Aware. They do always respond when we hold consultations on gambling. However, they don't ever comment on any specific item within the policy or draft policy. It's more of an awareness that the charity are there and what support services they offer for people who have issues with gambling harm. So they've not offered any real response other than the fact that they've received it and they're aware of it. With that in mind, we've not made any changes to the proposed policy that was proposed to you in July. What we're asking of you today is to approve the draft policy in its wording. Approve that it makes its way through to council, next meeting being on the 17th of November, because it requires formal council approval. And at that point, it will just be published in January 2022 in line with the statutory timelines that we have to meet. I don't propose to go into any further. It's quite a simple report for you, but I'm happy to take any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Matt, does any member wish to speak on the item, please? No? Okay, thank you. Can the item be ratified as per the recommendation, please?
I move that we do so.
Thank you.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now moving to item 5, which can be found on pages 41 to 48 of your pack. These are the proposed fees to be charges for the licensing of the scrap metal dealers gambling sexual entertainment venue licensing for 2022/2023. Well, Mr. Burton, will you take us through the item, please?
Yes, thank you again, Chair. This report is one that comes to members every year. It's in relation to fees and charges for certain aspects of various licensing regimes where there is local fee setting to be done. And the areas in particular that we're considering for this report are scrap metal dealers, that's both sites and the mobile collectors, gambling, where those fees can be set locally, some are statutory, and also sexual entertainment venue licensing as well. So in the body of the report, in the background, it's outlined that they are licensing regimes, they are council functions, and we do have a duty and an ability to set fees locally if we want to. And also in February of 2017, council delegated the function to the licensing committee to set these fees. So it is a decision for the committee this evening to either ratify what we're proposing or to make amendments for fees to be set for the year 22-23. At 1.3 and 1.4, it explains about fees for under the Gambling Act. 1.5 to 1.6 of the report, it explains the fees that can be set for sexual entertainment venues. And at 1.7, the same can be said for the scrap metal dealers. Part 2 of the report, there's an outline of the European Services Directive and some guidance for local authorities on how fees should be set and what can be included. Essentially, they've got to be proportionate. It's not for profit making. They have to be appropriate for what we do in terms of carrying out the work when we're either issuing the licenses or considering the applications that come in. And then at point 3.1 is the table of the fees that we're proposing. I won't go through line by line, but I'll try and just give you a quick overview. In terms of sexual entertainment venues, sex establishments, we don't have any currently. We do have the ability to have one or more than one. We've simply added the 3% on in terms of the inflation for those license fees. So that's what we would be proposing. In terms of scrap metal dealers, again, we do have a small number of those, only a handful of sites, and not many collectors anymore either. And again, we're proposing the 3% increase on those. In terms of gambling, the vast majority of the fees are set by statute, so we can't do anything with them. The fees that can be set locally are the ones that relate to premises licenses. So that is for things like bingo premises. Again, we don't have any track betting, that we don't have any betting premises, so betting shops, family entertainment centres, and adult gaming machines and casinos. We're already at the statutory maximum that we're allowed to go to for bingo, betting, family entertainment centres and adult gaming centres. So there's nothing to amend there. The variety of permits that are covered by the Gambling Act, they're all statutory, so we're not looking at those. The only 2 points to note really are there's one new fee, which is for a temporary use notice, which is known as a ton. We've never had a fee for that before, so we are due to set one now. We've never had a ton, as I've said, and at 3.2 of your report, I've given a sort of a brief indication of what a ton actually allows someone to do. Essentially, it allows a person or an organisation who already hold an operating licence with the Gambling Commission to make facilities for gambling in a premises that aren't already licensed for those purposes on a very temporary basis throughout the year or on certain days throughout the year. The only other fees really to consider are the casinos and the small casinos. Members will know already that we have already decided that we're not going to have casinos, so the fees are there. The legislation may change to allow us to have casinos. If it does, then it would be prudent to have, it would be prudent to have fees set for them. And again, we've looked at 3%. We're nowhere near the maximum fees for those, but as I say, it's very unlikely that we'll ever have one, because we have a resolution that says we're not going to, and the legislation says we can't have anything above a small casino anyway. So section 4 of the report, it outlines the areas that we can consider when we're setting the locally set fees, and most of that has come from the local government association fee setting guidance. And then in section sort of 6 and beyond, it just explains a bit more about a Westminster case Hemming and Westminster that relates to fee setting. So what we're asking you this evening is to consider the fees in the table at 3.1 and either agree that those be set for the next financial year or to amend them as per your discretion. Again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take any.
Matt, does any member wish to speak on this, please? Councillor Williams.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The officer's given me an answer to, I was going to ask the question, how many licences for collecting of scrap metal, and he just said an handful. But really, when you look at this, we can say success by local government by bringing out licences for the collection of scrap metal. If you remember a few years ago, they were a menace. Every few hours in my area, they were going around screeching on these loads because they're disturbing the peace in a way, or the tranquility, whatever. And we brought licenses out, and really, from what I've seen, it's stopped completely. So really, it's a success by local government and bringing that licence out for the collection of scrap metal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any other members wish to speak? No. Can this item then be ratified as per the recommendation, or is a vote required?
I move it's ratified, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are we all in agreement? Thank you. Right, part 2, public protection. Does anyone want to declare any interest in relation to public protection matters on this agenda? No. Moving to item 7, this is in relation to private hire and Hackney carriage fees and charges for 2022/2023 on pages 49 to 56 of your pack. Mr. Burton, would you please take us through the report, please?
Yes, thank you again, Chair. Again, members will have seen this report before. It's an annual report that we bring in relation to setting of taxi fees. This is the first stage. We've proposed some fees, which I'll get to in just a second. But the proposal is for members to consider the proposals, to then send the proposals out for public consultation, as we're required to do when we change certain fees, and then to allow us to bring back the results of that consultation and fee proposals to be set by the committee at a future meeting, which will likely be the next one in January. So as a background, again, it's a council function, the setting of fees. Council have again delegated the responsibility of this to the Public Protection Committee to determine. Sections 1.3 through to 1.4 explain what the council's duty is when setting fees in terms of advertising and consulting. Section 1.5 explains the changes that were made by the Deregulation Act in 2015 in relation to licence lengths. 1.6 relates to the European Services Directive, again, that was mentioned in the previous report, that says that it's not for making profit, it's cost recovery. It needs to be appropriate and proportionate. 1.7 is in relation to a Court of Appeal case from 2019, which explained that we were actually allowed to take into account enforcement costs for certain licenses, as well as the administration. So they've been factored in for the past couple of years when we've been proposing fees to members. And there's an extract there from the judgment for you to read and understand if required. So in terms of the proposal, the table is at 2.2. It's a slightly different table to previous years, and the reason for that is I've added in what we proposed last year, which wasn't ratified by members, and it was determined that we'd stay with the fees that we had. So just to show you the three sets of fees, for the ability to compare them directly. So in terms of the fees, again, I won't go through line by line. You'll see that some do have what looks like a large percentage change. The ones with the higher percentages tend to be a small fee that has gone up £1 or £2. So a 17% increase is actually £1. The ones of note really are the private hire operator application fee, which is the first one that you can see. That is currently set at £250, and we're proposing that it would be for 267, which is 7% difference from what it currently is, but only £1 extra from what we proposed last year in terms of where we thought the fee needed to be set. The next one really is to do with the dual driver badge. As you'll see, it's the 257. We're looking at 273 due to some of the changes and having those enforcement costs that we mentioned. It's the same as we proposed last year. Some of the fees have stayed the same when they're set externally of the council. So the DBSs, some of the training courses, they're not changing. The safeguarding training, we're looking to bring down from what we currently charge because we've changed how we administer the course. And probably the headline is in terms of vehicles. We're looking to reduce the vehicle testing fees from what they have been over the past several years in terms of that. So you'll see that there's some minus percentages, somewhere around sort of 24 through to 37%, and that's to do with sort of the efficiencies that we've created in terms of the testing and the time spent by the testers on the vehicles. There's an explanation at 2.4 of your report that relates to those testing fees. And shows that the total cost of a licence for a Hackney carriage would reduce by £34, and for private hire vehicles by £35, both of which equate to about a 10% reduction for licence holders and applicants. So just to confirm, the proposal that we're putting forward today is that members consider the fees in the table, whether or not they're suitable, then that we are permitted to go out for consultation, public consultation, and then to bring the report back to members once we've followed up that we've carried out that consultation for a final decision to be made for the next financial year. If there's any questions, again, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
Mr. Burton. Do any members have any questions or comments, please? We'll start from the back. Councillor Marco Chesty, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, Matt. And obviously, as the table suggests, there are some variations in some small price increases and some decreases. And 2.4 helpfully gives an overview of the overall licensing cost if you were to take it all together. Just curious though, I think it's accepted. I think everyone in the room would agree that the taxis that run about in our area, we would like them licensed by this authority, so we are able to carry out the necessary enforcement, as opposed to, you know, the growing trend and numbers of taxis that are licensed by other authorities that run around, such as Wolverhampton. And so I guess in this price review, where does that leave us in terms of comparison to other authorities such as Wolverhampton? And if we've made that sort of comparison, I wonder if we think that this will either encourage more to stay with the borough or to license with the borough, or it will encourage more to license with the likes of Wolverhampton. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Olszewski. We haven't directly carried out any benchmarking with other authorities. The way that we set our fees isn't sort of done in that way. I will have a look for the fees as we speak. The way we set our fees now, and have done for the past few years, is based on the officer time it takes to carry out whatever the individual task is, as well as the physical cost of issuing something. So whether it be plates that have a cost to the plate, the hardcover, the bracket, and so on. That's how we determine where we are. In terms of the taxi test fees, I think it's been identified that that's been quite high for a number of years. And when we've reviewed the time taken by the testers and the type of tests that are carried out, and the change to sort of test booking that we're going to be bringing in soon, it's identified that really the price point probably was higher than it needed to be. So now we think this is the appropriate fee for that testing. In terms of vehicles running around the authority from other local authorities, I take the point in terms of fees. Typically, where a driver remains licensed with Newcastle, they won't really have much option as to which vehicle they drive. It has to be one that's licensed with ourselves. But because of how the Deregulation Act changed and deregulated, funnily enough, private hire operating in 2015, it allowed companies, and it's usually the bigger companies who are benefiting from this, to source their drivers and their vehicles from a number of local authorities. And all they've got to do is make sure their computer systems can adequately explain that they've taken a call or an app booking from someone in Newcastle. It's gone into their system, and then it's then allocated to or been accepted by a driver and a vehicle who are licensed by the same authority, but doesn't necessarily need to be a Newcastle one. I know the other local authorities that you're speaking about, Stoke and Wolverhampton, are the main ones that also operate in the area. They both have conditions on their licenses that that drivers and license holders must comply with reasonable requests from officers of Newcastle. And again, we've put something in similar for any Newcastle drivers and vehicles that may be operating away from our borough. It will be difficult though, unless there's a legislation change, to have any more sort of formal enforcement powers in terms of licensing issues. However, if it's something like applying for hire, then we would be the authority that would have to deal with it anyway, because it would be in our area. I'm just looking for the fees now to see if I'm able to find them. Wolverhampton, I found their vehicles. They have quite a wide range of fees depending on the age of the vehicle. So they can run from £135 for a vehicle plus all of the testing that goes with it, which I don't have, up to £300. So one of those fees is lower than ours, one of those fees is much higher than ours. So it's a little bit hard to tell exactly where we are in comparison to them. I'm just struggling to find the Stoke ones at the minute, Councillor, sorry.
It's okay.
Would you like me to carry on searching?
Yes, please, if you do. And when you're searching, Councillor Williams, did you want to say anything, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it seemed when licensing came in, new licensing rules came a few years ago to make it easier, but it seems more complicated now than ever. But I want to thank Mr. Byrne for putting actually the figures down and percentage-wise that look quite big in some respects. When you look at the figures, they're quite small. But nevertheless, I will say that the fees and they're going up. The fuel, petrol and diesel has gone up tremendously through the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic. And the areas like mine, which are very low car ownership, rely on taxis as like a public transport, because the buses have reduced over the years, and it's very difficult for people to get about other than taxis. So I just remind members, that in areas where people need to use taxis to go to the doctors and go to shopping, to get the essential things in life, not to go out enjoying themselves, but actually to go get to the essential things for them to lead a reasonable life. These figures are going up and up and up, not just ours. And I can understand Mr. Burden's point that we've got to cover some of the costs, but we're only part of a structure that increases the cost of living to our residents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kieran, you next, and then we've got Councillor Hutton. Councillor Kieran.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'll just echo Councillor Williams in thanking Mr. Burton for the presentation, and also the providing the range of fees, including the fees last year that this committee rejected. But also, as Mr. Burton pointed out, last year when we considered the proposed fee increases, which at that point were fee increases pretty much across the board, as Mr. Burton points out, a majority of members of this committee decided that they couldn't support that increase because of the impact on the trade, for the reasons that Councillor Williams outlines, the importance of having a decent private hire service for residents in areas with poor public transport. I suppose what I'm about to say now is primarily for the benefit of anyone from the trade that might be watching this on YouTube. The picture that we're presented with as a committee this year is much more complex. It isn't increases across the board. It's a mixture of increases, but also some apparently significant decreases. So I think it's important, those of us on this committee that are sympathetic to the potential impacts on the trade, in the context of the issues that Councillor Williams has already outlined. But those of us on this committee that are sympathetic to the trade, I think we really do need a clear response from the trade to the consultation about how the trade feels about these proposals. If this was simply another set of increases across the board, I think I and some other members of this committee would be mindful to vote against it. But it isn't increases across the board. It is a much more complex picture. So we need the trade to use their experience and their expertise in the consultation to inform us, to make sure that we know how this is going to impact on the trade. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Chair. The last time charges came to this committee, as Councillor Kieran said, they were rejected. And the challenge from the Chair, Vice Chair and the Cabinet member to the team was to look again at how we could cost things and to see if there were reductions, so that overall, even though there might be slight increases in some things, overall, if we could reduce it in other areas, then this would be beneficial. So I have to say thank you to the members of this committee, all of you, because you started something which has led to an overall decrease. And I think that is absolutely wonderful. That's what councillors are here for. The staff accepted the challenge and have come up trumps. So thank you, Mr. Burton and everybody else in the team. So I think this is an excellent proposal. And if nobody else is going to speak, I would like to propose that we accept this and move it forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are we all in favour? Councillor, we are? Yes? Thank you. That's proposed.
Yeah, if it assists, I have found the Stoke ones. I appreciate there's just been a vote, but I don't think it will change anything. If the proposal goes forward, we're very much alike us with Stoke. We're proposing £304 and £301 for Hackneys and private hire vehicles. Stoke-on-Trent is £370 £7 for a vehicle licence and a fee. So we're very much sort of on par for the fees that they currently have. I don't know what they're proposing, if anything, for next year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Burton. Are members content that the recommendation as set out in the report is accepted? Thank you very much. The next item is item 8 on your agenda in relation to public protection and is in a closed session. This is to resolve that members of the public be excluded from that meeting during consideration of the report, because it is likely that there will be a disclosure exempt of information as defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 7 and in part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Can I please ask the officer to stop broadcasting and remove any members of the public?